Hi there, I'm Nate Shear, your guide on Mind Force. We're all about love, life, and learning because what's on your mind really does matter. Today we have Teresa Ramirez, and today we will be talking about tips on how to be kind in difficult situations. Some of these examples include changing the way you look at things, catching someone off guard with some humor, not engaging. Is it more important to be right or to be kind? We'll start with the easy stuff, the four W's. Who are you?
Who am I? I am Teresa Ramirez, and I used to be in the corporate world for 30 years, took care of my parents for about 5, and then started on kindness.
That's perfect. So what do you do?
Nope, this is what I do. I teach parents or encourage parents to become the CEOs of their family and teach their children to be kind. As CEO, like in a corporation, they set the values and the philosophy, and it filters down through the company. Works the same way with the family.
Perfect. You took that and translated over. I love when things, happen in different sections, but can be applied across all sorts of different things. And the
That's right.
next one is, why are you here?
I am here just to spread kindness and to get the word out that, yes, we can change your corner of the world, one ripple of kindness at a time.
That's great. And the last one, where in the world are you calling from?
I am calling from chilly Cincinnati, Ohio in the United States.
Ooh, Ohio, going through some snow and all sorts of stuff.
Yes. We had 10 inches last week, and we're not used to that much snow. A couple
Yeah,
inches, we're good. Anything over that, we're like, oh my goodness.
I'm looking forward to the conversation on kindness. I had one yesterday on men's mental health, and it's just so interesting because we were talking about how as a man, you have to be strong and pull yourself up by your bootstrings and, not have any emotion and things like that. So kindness and whatnot, it'll be really interesting. I'm looking forward to this one.
Okay.
So we'll start with a little bit of warm up, try to get things going. What's a moment when someone's kindness completely surprised you or impacted you?
Oh my gosh. I think, when someone's kind to me, I'm so used to doing acts of kindness. So when it reverses, and that's the way it's supposed to work, I still get the proverbial buy the cup of coffee. And I do that every time I go into the coffee shop. And lo and behold, someone bought my coffee one day and I was just blown away. And it was so simple, something so simple, and I think it's funny that I still get blown away when someone's kind to me because this is what I do. And the whole premise is once you start being kind to others, they're kind to you. It's a ripple effect. So when they are kind to me, it is kind of funny that I do get shocked.
I think that's a super important reminder, though, that things are the smaller things. The last couple episodes I had, we've hit on it. And, even though it's from completely different fronts and things like that, we want these huge things that we have to go and do in a project. It's just the little things. I think we're like making things more complicated than they need to be. Be nice, hold the door, push that
Yeah.
kindness out and it'll ripple out. So if anyone's
And
listening, just be
I was
nice
just
to
going to
people.
add to that simplicity is that smile and a hello. And I have a story, a friend, he retired, got bored, went to work in a parking garage, said it was the best job he's ever had. He's having a ball. And he went on vacation for a couple weeks. And when he came back, he said, people were yelling at me because they had bad days for 2 weeks because I wasn't there to smile and say good morning. And he was just shocked at what an impact he had. And all he did was smile and say good morning to these people. And he came to me and he was so funny. He came to me and he said, you kindness lady, you tell me it's simple. You tell me it's easy. He goes, I didn't really buy into it until I experienced it. So just buy into it, everybody. It does make a difference.
And I think you never know. I think that's one thing that's important. Like you do it to feel better and push that out into the world, but you're not necessarily looking for anything in return, right? So you pass the person, you give the smile. You don't know if that does anything or that completely change that person's day, but you need to do it and push it out there. But yeah, you might not ever hear, he doesn't take the leave of absence and he never hears, how impactful that was, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So sometimes you don't get to necessarily see the rewards you reap. Next question I had for you is, if you could describe kindness, since you are the kindness lady, in one word other than kindness, what would it be and why?
Oh, in one word. I don't have one word.
Phrase.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to go with a phrase. And people will think, again, it's kind of cheesy, but it's right. Being kind is treating people the way you want to be treated and lifting people up. If you're not doing those things every day with every encounter, then you're not being kind. And I'm not saying I'm guilty. There are days when we're all in our head space and we're not even looking around. We're on our phones and you don't pay attention. It happens to me too. And I do this as a lifestyle. But if you're doing it more intentionally, that
Yeah,
helps.
that's important. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and the last question, the warm up is, what's the kindest thing someone has ever done for you during a difficult time?
Oh my gosh. And it goes back. I was going through a divorce and I just was struggling. A lot of people do. Someone just came up and gave me a hug, and it's a complete stranger because I evidently had it all over my face one day. And they just said, "It's okay. Everything's going to be okay." And I just remember looking at them going, "Yeah, it is." But it was, again, something very simple. And I never saw that person again. And they probably don't know what they did for me that day because I was pretty low that particular day.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like I mentioned before, I mean, you might not ever know. It's interesting. You just got to do what's right, and try to stay off our phone, stay attentive, stay in the present, and take care of people. Well, before we get into the three, oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to add to that is that with that person, they had to have some guts to hug a stranger. They didn't just say hi. They actually hugged me. And I said, so if you read the room, but take that risk, as we say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those situations that feel uncomfortable and you're not sure. And, she knew what felt right and, did what she needed to. That's good. But yeah, I could definitely see that being difficult. And then before we start on the three main pillars that you have, I'd like to know if you have a question for me.
I have a question for you. How do you work with people that are struggling mental health wise? I know you said you had a couple um, other episodes and you've had episodes with men. And so how do you handle those situations?
So, yeah, I think it's a really difficult thing. It's a big problem. We don't have enough mental health workers. We don't solve things at the lowest level. There's a lot of different problems and a very complex problem set. Wicked hard, as people, I think, in Massachusetts say. But the thing I found throughout these different interviews and talking to people is always connection,
Mm-hmm.
sharing stories and having connection. I think when you get in a headspace, you isolate, you spiral downwards, you think it's only you. And humans have been around for way too long at this point for anything to happen to you and only you. It's probably happened to someone else. And so I don't know what the solution is. I wish I had a solution, especially myself being active duty military. I mean, we have like 22 suicides a day. It's a lot of problems with veterans and then processing things. But my hope is the connection. That's why we're here sharing stories and hopefully something that's said connects with somebody. But I think that's the only solution that I really know of is hearing things and then finding that connection. Someone else went through it and sharing the success. That's something I wish we did a much better job. Like in the military, we have to go to work and go to these briefings. We always talk about the warning signs and all the negative aspects of mental health and suicide awareness. But I wish we talked about the success afterwards. I went through a difficult time. I went through this terrible thing, like divorce, been there. That's real joy. And, you got to get through these difficult things, but you get to the other side and realize, hey, I'm still here. I'm good. I'm still pressing on. But for some reason, we like to talk about those warning signs and keep an eye out for this and they give away all their stuff and all these things. But like, can we talk about the people that bounce back and have the convertible they've always wanted or the family they always wanted or the position they always wanted? Really hone in on the success. So I think stories would be what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to go back to like prevention, thinking that way before the signs start. Is there something to help stop it before you get there?
I don't know. I don't think it's really there. I mean, I know we talk about like the lowest level, and I think that's where that would be. You should have someone to vent to, and a wingman. Like we say that a lot, being, Air Force, that's our term is wingman. But I just don't think it's executed very well. It is sad, but we need to have better ability to make those connections and whatnot. We move a lot, so you might be at a new location, you don't have those friends. And so some of those things are kind of difficult. I think when people live in a hometown, you have that support system and family and friends you've known forever. But when you're moving every couple of years, the support system isn't really there. So that lowest level, it sounds great that you'd solve it before it gets bad. But if you don't have the lowest level, then that's kind of difficult.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just thinking that, with veterans, if you have never been in the military or experienced that, just get over it. I've heard people say this, and I'm like, never tell anybody that.
Yeah, unless you've lived it. That's one of those things, like we immediately go right into the basic training stories. And, if you've lived it, even if it's a different service, I know, we rag on each other a little bit, Army and Air Force and whatnot, but there's just that bond where if you can share stories from, basic, a deployment, some, TDY where you were in a condition that wasn't all that fun. It seems like the best stories always seem to be in conditions that aren't very, very good. But I think that goes back to like the resiliency aspect, like I mentioned earlier. Like you got through it. It was awful. It was crazy, but I'm still here. So
Yeah, and
mindset.
sadly, it makes you who you are today.
You
It
don't
wasn't
get,
fun, but look at
yeah,
you
you don't
now.
get the resilience without going through the tough times. I think sometimes like it's kind of a buzzword now. It feels like resilience, like I need that, but it doesn't come for free. It comes from those difficult situations where, you had 3 roommates and the house was crazy and all these different things. You had no money, you ate ramen. I don't know. It's crazy, but
I still cringe,
you got to
but I
do what you got to
remember
do.
it.
Kraft
And,
macaroni.
and, and I was kind of going into some of that because with kindness, one of the things through my research that I found is there are studies that show being kind is nice. It's not just all fluffy and nice. Everybody goes, oh, yeah, that sounds great. But there are studies that show it actually does something to you physically. And if you and I exchange an act of kindness, your serotonin levels go up, and so do mine. And serotonin are our happy hormones. And so now from one act of kindness, you and I are happy. So things, the depression's less, the anxiety's less, we're doing better. But anyone in the room that observed it, their serotonin levels also go up. So from one act of kindness, we've got a room full of happy people. And that's why I keep harping on the ripple, because it is. And we just need to focus. And I'm not saying, like we were talking earlier, don't do the big things. Focus on the small things in your corner. And if each of us are doing that in our corner and creating those ripples are eventually going to merge and create a wave of kindness across the country and around the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, out of curiosity, what would you say is the common misconception, the biggest myth behind kindness? Because I could see, like you said, rainbows and butterflies. That sounds
Yes.
great. But what is the biggest myth?
I think that's one of the biggest myths, is it's all rainbows and butterflies, or I have to do this huge, huge grand gesture. Smiling and hello doesn't do anything. And nobody cares if I moved that shopping cart out of their space. Yeah, but if you didn't, it would make a big deal to a mom with 3 kids in the car who has to get out and move that cart to have that coveted close spot. And I think people just don't realize, they don't take the time to think that and be intentional that, yes, that makes a big difference. If you don't have anybody smiling and saying hello to you in a day, think about it. That'd be pretty awful. And if you don't, your arm's full of stuff and you're trying to get in the door and someone's not there to open it, you're trying to open it with your foot or your elbow, and then someone comes along and opens it. It is just those. Or I had one, I walk my dog a lot, so I have lots of dogs walking stories, but there is a strip mall along the bike trail and someone had to carry their stroller up those steps. Would you like some help? And I just grabbed the bottom. She had the top, and with less than 30 seconds, we had that puppy up there. She didn't have to struggle. She was, she didn't have to do anything. She goes, cute. But even, that just little act, people don't know. She was so thrilled. Another quick, I'm sorry, I have lots of stories.
I
Another
love
one,
stories.
again, people just don't realize in the shopping, come around the corner to the produce. And those lovely bags. And this poor woman, she's standing there trying to open the bag. She's got the toddler in the cart screaming their head off. And you can just see on her face, I have to get 2 things and we can get out of here. And you could just see that on her face. And before I could move, a gentleman came and took the bag from her and opened it and handed it back. The baby stopped crying and she was like, the weight of the world was lifted off her shoulders because somebody opened a produce bag.
Yeah.
I said, that's the misconception. Those little things mean a lot to somebody.
I think those are like the deepest memories. Our career field just sent out this email and it was like a New Year's resolution kind of thing. And it was like a short newsletter. And it basically said, like, reach out to someone in our career field that you haven't talked to in a while. So I reached out to one of my best friends, Kyle Guthrie, and talked to him. And it was interesting because we were both sharing stories from our first duty assignment together. And I wanted to think of all these like large events, but both of us, both ways, ironically, thought of the time we went to go get coffee and these like smaller barbecues and whatnot. They weren't large events, but they're like core memories at this point where, it was just an afternoon coffee and that was the way that we processed and vented and got through a difficult year. And so I just thought it was funny because we both shared stories both ways. And I looked at both of them. I was like, these aren't even big events. These are small things that I remember and will remember forever. So I was trying to rack my brain around this huge story. And really, I just needed the little stories that got us through.
Yeah. And it's funny you should say that because recently I've been invited by a corporation. My core audience is parents, but everybody wants kindness. And this corporation asked me to come in for a team building exercise. And they were like, okay, what do you want? I said, no, we're keeping it simple. I want paper and pen. And what I had them do, because I have them do this different with kids, but I did it with adults. I said, you put your name on a piece of paper and put something positive you want to hear that day. So on one side, and then you're going to wad those paper balls up and throw them in the middle of the table. And you're each going to go and grab one of those balls of paper. And they have to then go to that person whose name's on the ball and say to them that thing they really wanted to hear today. And I do with kids. I make it more of a project. It's a paper airplane and they put their name on one side and something they want to hear on the other. And then the kids love to do that. So they throw them all in the middle of the room. And that's just like, and then it's a free for all to go pick out an airplane. But so either way, with adults and kids, you can do all those things. But again, I'll never forget the guy just staring at me going, that's all you want? And I said, that's all I need. And they thought it was great. They thought it was the greatest thing. So
yeah, it's
it doesn't
the small
take much.
things. So we'll move into your 3 pillars. The first pillar you selected was changing the way you look at things. How has changing your perspective helped you approach challenging situations with kindness?
Yeah, I will tell you another story. I was having lunch with a friend and they were really busy. And the server finally comes up, I have a pad, but finally comes up and says, what do you want? And that's exactly how she said it. And we're like, well, we haven't been here in a while. We have a couple questions. I don't know. I was told to come take your order. What do you want? And I'm like, I'm like, oh gosh. So we placed our order, we got what we needed and everything. And at the end, my friend and I are sitting there because we're like, maybe we need to tell the manager what's going on. And then I'm like, I got another idea. So we paid and we did tip her. And on the receipt, I put a smiley face and said, you are designed to shine. We picked up her stuff. We went out. She chased us into the parking lot and she was crying. And she said, I really needed that today. I'm having a really bad day. Like, yeah, you are. But I'm like, and that was it. Then she turned around and went back into the restaurant. So, when people are yelling at you and doing things, it's rarely about you. It's about something that happened last week. This morning, clearly she had a bad morning. Something underlying is there. So that's why I said change your perspective. And we could have legitimately called over the manager and said, she's not doing her job. We were treated like crap. We didn't. I chose to do the kind route and it paid off. And I just thinking, thank goodness, because all those customers after us got a little bit better person than we did.
It's crazy how powerful perspective is. I love stories, so I'll share one that I like to tell.
Please.
I was rushing in. I was taking my baby boy into daycare. He was a couple years old, and I went to go park at the child daycare center, and someone had parked over the line. And for some reason, I was like, I can't believe it. This person's so inconsiderate. Like, I'm just human. My brain is going 100 miles an hour. I'm like built up anger. I didn't get to work at this point because, I do daycare before work. So it's just like an awful day. And I'm like, I just can't believe it. All these terrible thoughts of this person. I don't know this person. I don't know the car, but all of a sudden, all these negative thoughts. And so I go in, drop my son off, and I come back to the parking lot. And so in a few quick minutes, I come back to my car and I inadvertently sidestep because they did. And that car is now gone and I am over the line. So now the next person sees me in the exact situation that I was so angry with this person just a few minutes ago. And I didn't have any ill intent. I didn't mean it at all. And so I just paused and thought for quite a while, because I feel like we read books and you can learn ways in so many different ways. But learning when it happens to you in real life, like I remember that forever. Like now I try to take the deep breath. Don't think of what the person was trying to do or whatnot. Like they were probably rushing the same way I was rushing, and they probably stepped over the same way I stepped over. So just pausing, taking a deep breath, and not trying to put intent on anyone. I don't know what they were doing.
No, and that is one of the things I teach. I teach pause. And when you get to this point, I do teach the pause, what I call the pause or your pause, because that can be anything. What works, that's the one thing that I do say, I am giving you the framework. You tweak it to make it work for you. So the pause, your pause is that. So whether it's, sticky notes, alarm on your phone, whatever works. And one of the biggest things, I did a 21-day kindness challenge when I first started this. And I got to a day, the challenge was no road rage. I have more comments on that than anything else. And I just went back and did a whole video and I said, there is no room in your journey in kindness for road rage. They're just not. But it evidently is very common. And I loved my horn. I will just tell you right now that my horn was my favorite thing. So for my pause, because I knew that was where I struggled, I put a big pink sticky note on said stop. And I no longer use my horn unless somebody's sitting at the light and they're on their phone and the light turns green. I do kind of did the polite to say, because they don't not purposely sitting there at the light for no reason. But the whole road rage thing has been funny. But that helps. The pause helps there because, I remember somebody goes, but they cut me off. And I said, they probably didn't see you. Like you said, you don't know that person in the parking lot. You didn't realize it. And I know I had another fun story. And this is where your humor might come in. That I was on an exit ramp at a freeway. And guy in front of me gets out of his car and he is yelling and he's coming for me. And I'm like, oh my. And don't ask me why. I have something in my car. So I put it on. And waved. He couldn't stop fast enough. And ran back to his car. And I, to this day, wonder, when he got where he was going, what did he tell people about the crazy lady with the red nose?
That is hilarious. Definitely
and now I use
right?
it all the time. I had gotten it, if you've ever heard of Patch Adams.
Yeah, Rob
the
Williams.
doctor
That was a great movie.
Yeah, he introduced humor into medicine, more or less.
Yeah.
And he always ran around with a red clown nose. So I bought it and put it in my car, forgot to take it inside. So that's why it was sitting in my car. Because I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Well, I use it often now. You can use this when your kids are fighting. You put it on and then you get between them. And they're like, and my kids roll their eyes going, oh, geez, she's at it again. But they stop fighting.
Huh. That's interesting. You could put them in the one big shirt or I guess put on a big red nose. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, it does work. They, after, like I said, my kids will just roll their eyes and say, are you kidding me? She's doing it. And just don't do it in front of our friends.
don't embarrass us. We're trying
Yeah.
to be cool. So within this pillar, the next question is, what advice would you give to someone struggling to see things differently during a conflict? They're just stuck in the conflict.
And it's so hard. But you have to realize, and I think this is something people forget. And again, that's where the pause comes in. Personal pain, it's as unique as a fingerprint, and you never know what someone is going through. So I always say, be kind. Really practice in that pause. And it takes practice. This isn't something that happens overnight. I've been doing this now since 2018. For me, it's easier, but I practice it every day. I get up in the morning and say, okay, God, what kind intention do I have today? And, I look at my schedule and, okay, I bet I could do this. I told you we had 10 inches of snow, and my son's car is not good in snow at all. So he asked me to drive him to work. So I did. So he threw, because, it's so much snow that came really, really fast. So the streets were not cleared. So I said, let's throw in a shovel just in case we get stuck. Well, we were fine. I got him to work. But on the way back, there are people parked on the side of the street trying to dig their cars out so they could get to work. I did pull over and help a couple people shovel their car out. And that's practice. I didn't even think about it. I said, I got a shovel. Let me help. So I think when people are really stuck, start focusing, try to focus. Again, you got to practice that pause and try to focus. What can I do to make somebody else's day better? And it's not easy. I'm not telling you it is. I'm telling you it takes practice. But that shifts your focus, and your happy hormones are raising. So then that gets you out of that rut, that anger that you're in. Because it still happens to me on occasion. So practice, pause, and focus on where you can help somebody else. I think about here in the United States, California is on fire. I'm sure you've heard about it over there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
people are just they've lost everything. Their life is literally, their life is in ashes. And this is something my analogy is, they don't even have a toothbrush. I do thank God now every morning for my toothbrush, but that's something we take for granted. We always have a toothbrush. Well, these people, their toothbrush is ashes. So, but for them, many of them are coming out of the shock, because I can't only imagine how horrible it is. They're coming out of the shock, but they're doing something for their neighbors. They're checking on the elderly neighbor. Did they get out? Did their pets get out? Do they need this? I can take something to them. And that's a great example of how you take that, I've lost everything. I'm in that cycle of I've lost everything. I'm depressed, the anxiety, yada, yada. And then you stop and said, Mrs. Jones down the street, I can go help her. And that brings you out of that cycle.
That's so wild, too. I mean, if you look at 9/11, or you look at these like massively negative events like that mass shooting in LA at Las Vegas at the country festival, or really any mass shooting, I guess, or anything like that. Like people grab each other, they help each other. Like, why does it take a very negative thing for people to help each other?
Yeah, it's sad. And a few months ago, North Carolina had the flood where their homes were literally, this was another thing I thought of. I'm standing across the street and the wall of water comes. My house, my car, everything just floats away. And I can't even imagine that feeling. But for them, no one could get to them. So they had to help themselves. And I remember some guy said, I had a backhoe. It wasn't washed away. And he was like plowing through his cornfield to make roads so people could get in. So yeah, it's amazing. I don't know why this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. You don't have to wait for the flood, for the fire, for the shooting to be kind. If we are kind more often, praying that the shootings will lessen as we go along, because people are happy. You're not going to shoot anybody if you're happy.
Yeah, hopefully. Yesterday, we talked about healthy boundaries. So I'm curious, how do you maintain healthy boundaries and maintaining kindness?
Yeah. And that's one thing I tell people, and I forgot this once but just because you're kind, that doesn't mean you're a doormat. You may use the word no. You're allowed. You don't have to be the people pleaser. You just have to treat whatever that situation is with kindness. How, if you were in that, try it again, this takes time and practice. Put yourself in their shoes. How would you want to be responded to?
The golden rule.
Yeah. The golden, you go back to that. And I know a lot of this people are like, well, I've heard it all before. I said, yeah, but are you practicing it? And yes, it is this simple. And I think we just need that lesson repeated over and over and over because we're not getting it until there is a catastrophe.
That's interesting. So the next pillar we have for you is humor, catching someone off guard. This will be fun. Why do you think humor can be such a powerful tool for defusing tension and fostering kindness?
Well, we go back to the clown nose because it did. That poor man that road rage ended right there and the kids stopped fighting right there. And at one-liners, because it just shocks people because they don't expect you. They're yelling and screaming. They expect you to yell and scream back. They don't expect you to put some great one-liner out there. And who's winning the fight today? Is it the devil or Jesus? And who, it's kind of just go into that. And I walked into situations. I volunteered at a home for a pregnant woman, and those poor girls had a lot of baggage. So they did a lot of yelling and screaming. So yeah, you had to come up with a one-liner just to shock them out of that cycle. And what it does, and the clown nose is a good one too. But if you can do the one-liners, that's even better. It stops. It stops that cycle. It stops that whatever. I'm trying to think of the word. Whatever they're in, it stops it. And you can get them to sit down and say, okay, what's the real issue? Is there even an issue? Are you just having a bad day? You're just cranky today. That it just comes down to that. And you can use that in the boardroom. How many times have you been sitting in a boardroom and everybody starts arguing and talking and nothing's getting accomplished? Loud noises work best in that situation. But I've seen it work. And then everybody, let's take 5. And then they come back and then they can talk constructively, get back on track. And it's simple. It's really just simple things, but reminding people that, oh yeah, and practicing that pause.
Have you ever seen the Outward Mindset by Arbinger Institute?
No, I do not.
Yeah, that's a really amazing course. Really enjoyed it. But one of the things they talk about, they do like different modules, and one of them is collusion. And so in collusion, you treat someone some way because they're treating you some way. And so it keeps the cycle going forever because you continue to treat them so that you can continue to get the feedback that you think you want or need. And then it just keeps the cycle going forever. And so if no one ever stops the collusion or stops that cycle, like you were saying, you'll just continue to do it forever because you are feeding off the thing that comes around. So the collusion one I thought was really powerful. The example they used, there was a waiting room, I think it was, for a hospital, and the pharmacy wanted the chairs one way, and then the lab wanted them a different way. And so every morning they'd come in and like mess the chairs up for the other ones. They just kept doing it. And then when they actually stopped, like, hey, what do you guys need? They needed more chairs or less chairs or whatever it was. And so they were able to do the purchase, get it fixed, and everyone was happy. But they just needed to stop for a second instead of just keep messing with each other.
Yeah. And hello, we're adults. It just keeps saying, aren't we adults? And, and another tool I use in that same vein is compliments. Somebody's really set off about whatever, and you're not just like, hey, I love those shoes. And again, it shocks them. Or, that report you did was amazing. Maybe you can teach me how to do a better report. Those kind of things, it's business, even in kids in school, can do the same thing. I love your backpack. The way you played that game on Friday night was awesome. Those kind of things, that book report you read. Wow, that was really good. So just, again, it's because you're not feeding into that, but you're giving them compliments, and they're just like, how can somebody continue to be nasty when you're telling them how great they are?
That's good. So the last question I have in this one, it's a little odd, but how can people balance humor with empathy to ensure it's kind rather than dismissive?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you do have to be careful with that because sometimes people use sarcasm, and some people don't get your sarcasm. So you have to be careful. Yeah, you have to be. Or if somebody is really in a bad mental state, you do read the room. And that takes that pause, goes back to that pause, read the room and see. Because with the server, I didn't know how that was going to go. And it went well. Thank goodness. I know another story. This woman, I walk my dog on the trail all the time, and she's cute and she's little. Everybody wants to pet her. So somebody asked me, can I pet your dog? Sure. Whatever. But then she sat down on the steps and she's talking and she's petting the dog. And I said, oh, geez. Well, then she starts saying, I lost my husband 6 months ago. And she's crying. And I'm sitting there going, oh my. So I just let her go. I had to let her go. And I lost my dog 3 weeks ago. And she's just going on and on. And you just have to in that situation, I had to just let her talk and pet the dog. My dog's very happy, climbed up in her lap. You think it's the greatest thing. And when she was done, she took a deep breath, stood up, wiped her tears, and she said, I haven't felt that good in 6 months. Yeah, I get teary-eyed over that one because it was heartbreaking to just see her like that. But it goes back to the pause and reading the room and saying, oh, maybe my sarcasm won't work that well.
Yeah, definitely gotta read the audience on that one. I don't know if the clown nose works in that one.
That would not have worked. It would not have worked in that situation. It would not have worked in the cafe at lunch that day. It would not have worked. So you just have to read the room and read the different situations and practice.
How do you see sympathy differently than empathy?
One, and I'm forgetting now, I'm going to get it mixed up. One, you've actually been there. You've actually been a veteran and you knew what it's like to come back and struggle. And the other one is like the California fires, is my heart just bleeds for them because I know that's a terrible thing. I have never experienced it, but I know it's not, I cannot even imagine losing everything, not having a toothbrush.
Yeah, it's rough. Empathy, it's nice when someone else has been there and done that and you can have that deeper connection. The last pillar you have is don't engage. Is it more important to be kind or be right? So why do you think it's so hard for people to let go of being right?
You're not in the United States, so you haven't seen the political environment. Like people
I only left in June.
And I love this quote by W.C. Fields. Just because you're invited to an argument doesn't mean you have to attend. And that comes down to, hey, do I want to be right or do I want to be kind? And I'm using the political environment here just because people are truly, so don't talk about it. If you know they're here and you're here, don't talk about it because you're not going to change each other's mind. And there are places for difficult conversations, not at the dinner table, not over Christmas dinner, not on Boxing Day. Those are not when you have those conversations. I know a friend, this has been, 20, 25 years ago, 2 uncles, they even sat them at different tables, but they got together, they destroyed their reception. They got into it, whatever people are like, we don't even want to remember what they were arguing about, but they ruined that wedding reception. And that couple, still married today, said, that's what we remember about our wedding day. And that's just heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking that our uncles ruined the wedding reception. So that's where I say, don't engage. Why is it so important to be right? It's not always important to be right.
I wonder, I think that's another good reminder for social media. Social media drives me nuts because people will see things they don't agree with and they feel like they got to stop and prove the other person wrong or whatever. You can keep scrolling. Just go.
Yes.
I mean, I don't understand. You're going to spend, there's only so much time in the day. It's hard earned to have your time to relax and sit on your phone if you get out of work or whatever. And you're going to spend that little time to fight someone that you don't even potentially know, or maybe a family member, which is probably worse. But it's the scrolling, you can just keep on moving. It's just really bizarre.
And I'm thinking, don't you have anything else to do?
Right. This well-crafted argument for what?
For what?
I don't really know.
Yeah.
So we've shared a lot of stories. I love stories, are my favorite. Can you share an experience when choosing kindness over being right made all the difference?
I think, let me think. I will tell you, this is a kind of a hard story. A friend of mine and I were having lunch, actually a group of us, and they're in Cincinnati. We have 2 basketball teams, University of Cincinnati and Xavier University, and they're basketball rivals, big time basketball rivals. And I went to Xavier. So yes, I'm a Xavier fan. And she was a UC fan. And we always, kind of banter back and forth when the basketball season comes around. It's always been just fun, jovial, they're going to kick your butt. They're going to kick, that back and forth, just that kind of thing. It's never been a big deal. And we were doing it. The group of us were doing it again. And she just went off. I don't know what it was in my face across the table. Don't you ever say that again. I don't want to hear it out of your mouth. And the whole table went silent. And I swear somebody was holding me into my chair because I wanted so bad to go back at them. And it took everything I had because I'm like, what the heck? But I didn't. I sat in that chair and took a deep breath and did that pause and didn't say anything else. And somebody else changed the subject. Thank God for friends. Yeah, it was awkward for a while. But in my mind, it's not. In my friendship, because it was more important. My friendship with them was, whoops, there goes the light. This is life. My friendship with them was more important to me than being right. And then you think everybody at the table, if we had, because it would have been the end of the friendship. It would have been nasty. And then I got to thinking afterwards, everybody and the friend in that circle of friends we had would have been affected. And how horrible would that be for them? So, yeah,
the same way you said the positivity ripples out, right? The negativity would ripple out the same way. That's tough. So we talked a lot about different stories and whatnot. What practical tips do you have for listeners to help disengage from negativity while maintaining their kindness?
Yeah, just keep the golden rule in mind. How would you like to be treated? Practice that pause and be intentional. Start your day out by how are you going to do something? What are you going to do today?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we talked about a lot of good things, the three main pillars, which are really good. How do you think these approaches, that perspective shift, humors, and disengaging, work together to create a foundation for kindness? Can you use them all together?
You could probably, I'm sure, I'm trying to think of a situation. I haven't had one, but I'm sure you could. But then again, I think, well, if you're reading the room, humor would not have worked in several situations. So there probably is some time where you could use them together, but I can't think of one right now.
That makes sense. It's more reading the room.
Yeah. And more reading the room. And separately, I know they have worked really well.
That makes sense. If you could leave listeners with one message, it's always tough, right? About the power of kindness, what would it be?
It would be that concentrate on your corner of the world, creating kindness, creating those ripples of kindness, because that does make a difference. And we're going to change the world one ripple of kindness at a time.
You want to eat this elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Well, Teresa, I thank you for coming out. I wanted to know if you have any final takeaways.
That's just it. Just remember, everybody's got something going on.
You never know what people are fighting through.
And so always, always, always be kind.
Well, thank you for coming out. Everyone, please join the conversation. Connect with us on any one of the many social media platforms to share your questions, insights, or feedback. We're building a community, and your voice matters. I love you all. See ya!